You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast, this week 2 of the 2023 NFL season. I'm Dave Griffiths, joined by Mike Chappell, Matt Adams right here. We have one game to talk about, which Matt already did a splendid job earlier this week, offering some insight from week 1, the Colts-Jaguars season opener. Horseshoes fall to the Jags, 31-21. Also a little bit of Shane Steichen postgame mixed in there, a little bit of Anthony Richardson postgame mixed in there. So if you are just a weekly subscriber or a tune-inner to the podcast, make sure you make it bi-weekly in the regular season as the year goes on, to get a few thoughts early in the week before we kind of touch on, I guess, last week, which we'll still do today, but also dive deep into this week 2 matchup. The Colts have a second straight AFC South showdown in Houston against the Texans coming up. We will first talk about week 1. We've got quarterbacks going head-to-head. Chap, you have something you want to say?
Just one thing about the Monday podcast that Matt will throw out there. We just take snippets of Steichen and Richardson, their postgame, so this gives you a chance to hear more of what they had to say, and I think fans really like to hear more in depth, as much as those are in depth, but it gives you more about what they're thinking, which I think is valuable.
Unfiltered. So if you just hate that guy, Mike Chappell, who writes for Fox 59, CBS4Indy.com.
And you take things out of context.
Exactly, all the time. You can get it straight from the horse's mouth there in that podcast on Monday. So that'll be out there for you.
I have never, ever, very seldom taken things out of context.
Never, ever. I try not
very
to.
seldom.
Right. Okay. From time to time, maybe it slips out. But let's dissect that week 1 game. First of all, some major takeaways, especially that can look forward into the rest of the season. But the Colts led, Chap, 21-17 entering the fourth quarter. But then things kind of fell apart there as they gave up the big punt return to Jamal Agnew, which you knew the entire game Rigo was trying to avoid because he did not have a good game. Like, still, I would still say it was a bad game for Sanchez. Like, he didn't do it as well as he has in the past, like directional punts to the sideline. Like, his punts just came off his foot weird. But nevertheless, all that to say, that really started to turn the tide, and the defense just started to not be able to do what it was doing earlier in the game. It looked like the Jacksonville offense really took that momentum and was able to build on it in the fourth quarter. And eventually the Colts defense could not hang on as they had been for the rest of that game. And Jacksonville pulled away for the win.
And that wasn't a bad punt. I mean, it was
that was a fine punt.
5-yard, 6-yard line. They had 3 guys there. The Colts did. I think Luke Rose and the rookie Jalen Jones was there. And Jalen Jones just lost track of things, and the guy got out. So down at the 5-yard line and hold him, and then you don't know. Then you got field position. But it just shows you how when you've got a small margin of error, as this team's going to have all year, it just is. You can't have blow-up plays on special teams because it just comes back and bites you.
And I'll say this, Matt, like if it's Ashton Doolin down there as the gunner, who knows what it is. And that's why Chris Ballard will tell us year after year until he's blue in the face that all 53 guys on the roster matter.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's the worst part about Doolin not being out there is that you have that veteran presence out there. He's a great special teams guy. So he's got his head on a swivel. He's going to probably down that ball. You got your rookie down there, not quite as aware yet, just still kind of getting his feet wet on things, and then that just is something that Major League turned that game around.
Here's a major takeaway that I had from week 1, and Chap, you and I were talking about this just earlier today, on Thursday, as we were at Colts headquarters doing some interviews this week. There were some ways that this game, the way it played out, reminded me of last year, because you had a lead entering the fourth quarter, or you played well for the beginning of the game, and then down the stretch, things started to spiral a little bit out of control. Defense couldn't hang on anymore, and there it goes. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is there is no running game to speak of right now to keep the defense on the sideline and rest up a little bit so they are still active and energetic just as much as the offense is, in the fourth quarter. And it goes back to something that Shane Steichen said right at the beginning of his introductory press conference, I think it was. We will throw to score. We will run to win. If you cannot run,
you can't win.
You will not win. And that's where the Colts were this week. There's a lot of things I think to be said that was good about Anthony Richardson's performance. There's some bad mixed in there as well, of course, and we'll talk about that. But I think the microscope really has to fall on the absence of a run game leading to a tired, worn-out defense in the fourth quarter that could not keep up with a high-powered Jacksonville offense at that point. That's what I took away from the game. I don't blame the defense, really. I don't blame the play calling. I don't blame Richardson's interception. I don't blame the punt return as much. I would blame the run game for being so inadequate that it spills over to other aspects of the game. And I thought it was just another feather in the cap for Jonathan Taylor to be like, look how valuable I am. Look how valuable the running game is in his continued, battle for respect, for money, for contract, whatever you might have it. So that was I thought that was the most concerning thing from week one to me, was the fact that they could not run the football, and that led to other problems elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't think you're right. This does sort of, in Taylor's mind, say, see, I make a difference. It's not going to move the needle from the team, I don't think. I don't think they're going to say, boy, we really need Jonathan Taylor. Well, they know that. Mm-hmm. So I don't think this is going to.
No, it's not a tipping point.
No, but it to me, it's just an indictment of this team knowing where they were with Taylor, which was nowhere. I mean, there was virtually no chance he was opening the season on the active roster. And now he's out 4 games, maybe more, we'll see. Yet you go into the season with this running backs room. And we're not trashing the individual players. These guys are given a chance. So you're criticizing the team for putting them in a position that they're either not ready for or not up to snuff for, which is probably what it is. Mm-hmm. It's not Deion Jackson. Now, it's Deion Jackson's fault that he fumbled twice,
right,
and dropped a pass,
right.
But he's never been that guy. I think he had 270 yards in his career rushing. And I've always said that with this group, it tells you where the running backs room is, where the roster is when you really, really miss Zach Moss. I mean,
when you're desperate for Zach Moss to come back,
because he had a really, really strong December. I think he was like 7th in the league in rushing with 300 and whatever, 80-some yards. And hopefully, I think there's a really good chance he plays this week. And oh, by the way, his career game came in week 18 last year with 114 yards in that
against the Texans.
And that incredible loss. Fourth and what was it? Fourth and the zillion.
All I know is, it was the game that kept Bryce Young from going to Houston.
Right. So, but you're right. This team was never. I don't think this team ever believed it needed to be top 5 in rushing, although it would be nice. But to put this offense to put the rookie quarterback in the position to where this is your running game. He was our leading rusher.
10 rushes, 40 yards.
10 for 40. But the backs had 16 for 25, I think it was.
Yep.
1.6.
1.6 yards per carry.
1.67. No, 1 point whatever. It's not enough. It's not 4 downs of that getting to a first down. Mm-mm. So it's in. You cannot keep relying on the quarterback to convert 3rd and 7, 3rd and 12, because you're getting. I think I looked and Jackson had 3 or 4 carries for like 1 yard, 0 yards on first down. So you're always behind the chains, and it was going to be. This is going to be a difficult year, and they've made it worse by not having somebody more proven at running back, and hopefully Zach Moss will be back and make a difference on Sunday.
I'll say this too, Matt, is that I've always felt that the offensive line should be able to get you 3 yards per carry. 3 yards per carry is not good in the NFL. It would go over the entire season of being the worst in the league if you average 3 yards the entire year. So everybody needs to get in sync on the offensive side of the ball, and it continues to be a concern. You cannot look at this game and completely say that the concerns you had about the offensive line last year are gone, because like I said, I think the offensive line should be able to get you a couple yards per carry, and that just didn't happen this week.
4th and inches.
Exactly. That they need to get that one.
And it's a problem that compounds because you can't run the ball early in a down, so that puts you behind schedule, as they say. Then let's say you do get a nice pass on 2nd down, or maybe you open up with a 8 or 9 yard pass on 1st down. Then they can't convert on 3rd and short. 4th and short, and they tried a lot of different things. They tried the Deion Jackson up the middle play. They tried the Deion Jackson, we're going to toss it and stretch out the defense play that I despise. They tried the Philadelphia quarterback sneak and still could not pick up a yard when they needed it.
Here's the deal about the Philly sneak, by the way, for everyone out there is like, how does this not work? I'll say this about Jalen Hurts. Like, you've probably seen the videos of him online squatting 600 pounds. That is a beast of a squat. He has the lower body strength of a bodybuilder. And Anthony Richardson's a big quarterback, a strong quarterback, but he's not out there squatting those 600 pounds. It also helps that Hurts is smaller, like in squats too. If you're a lifter out there, if you're a bodybuilder and you do squats, you know that shorter legs help you with squats because you don't have to go as far. Like Richardson's a tall dude. It would take a lot of energy to squat 600 pounds for him. But all that to say, like Jalen Hurts is a quarterback who is specifically designed for that. Like he seems like he is. Specifically designed to be good in that play. It might be more challenging for Richardson than you might think, even though being a 6'5", 250-pound quarterback, you think, oh, he's huge, he can push the pile. Well, there's more things that go into that, I guess, with his size that make it slightly more difficult. I would say that he should still make it anyway. Like I'm not trying to absolve him of all responsibility, but you put him behind Ryan Kelly and Quentin Nelson, you would sincerely hope that he can gain an inch or two for crying out loud.
You would think that you would get enough push from your offensive line that your big, strong quarterback would be able to get just that little bit of yardage, because it wasn't it was inches, we were talking about in that particular situation.
Some injuries on the offensive line, Chap. Quentin Nelson, Braden Smith did not practice this Wednesday, and we've talked that on this podcast throughout the offseason and particularly in training camp that you might be optimistic about the starting offensive line to return to the form it had several years ago, but if there was an injury or two, then you would start to really be scraping the bottom of the barrel when it comes to experience in the NFL and reliability, things that you can depend on. And if there are significant injury concerns, we'll see what happens in practice for the rest of the week, but it's not good to see two of your star offensive linemen on the injury report in just the first week of this season.
And we'll see what happens today and Friday. Again, you can tell nothing from the locker room. I talked to Braden 5 minutes on Wednesday, and he looked fine. I don't know how you don't look fine when you've got a knee and an ankle in the locker room. And Quentin had the toe. He missed like 2 or 3 snaps in the game.
A couple, yeah.
But it's a toe. It's a toe for an offensive lineman to push off of. So it's a thing. So yeah, we'll see. I don't get too bent out of shape on injury reports until Friday. Last week Zach Moss was limited for 3 days, and you thought, well, maybe he's got a chance, but then they downgraded him to doubtful. It's just most teams are like this. The Colts certainly are. If a guy's got something, that's something. He doesn't practice for a day or two. It's just, and these are veteran guys, so they can get by without it. But as we've talked about, ad nauseum, they've got 4 or 5 guys. If you lose them, the drop-off to the next guy is immense, and that certainly is the case on the offensive line.
More injuries from that Week 1 game. Drew Ogletree left with a concussion. He did not participate in practice Wednesday. If you'll remember the NFL's concussion protocol, you need a limited participation day in practice, then a full participation day in practice, and then to be cleared by a independent physician. So it would take a lot for Drew to be ready to go this Sunday. He would need, on this day as we talk, a limited participation in practice on Thursday, then full on Friday, and then to be cleared. So there's just no room for error right now if you want Ogletree back week 2.
And they really don't push that.
Yeah,
they don't. So I would expect him not to play. You'd hope for next week to play. Shaq missed, one concussion. He missed 3 games in year 2, and last year it's hard to know what he was going to miss because he had the fractured nose at the same time. But players react different, and hey, again, he looked fine in the locker room yesterday. Well, so what?
Exactly.
You don't see the Tweety birds in his head or whatever. So, but no, they are extremely cautious, and they should be. These are injuries that it's not like, well, you got a sprained ankle, it takes this. No, concussions are different for everybody.
One of the best things I thought about the first injury report with Wednesday's practice, Matt, was the fact that Anthony Richardson was not on it. Because last week, there was some. I thought that he might show up limited on the report because he tweaked his knee in that game. He did not. He was out there full participation in practice.
Yeah, I thought there might be something with his knee, there might be something with his ankle or something along those lines. But, he said he was fine after the game. Steichen said he just got a little banged up and he would be fine, and they weren't anticipating anticipating, but I still thought he would either appear on the injury report as limited in practice or maybe even full with like ankle, knee, or something along those lines.
They said he could have gone back in.
Right.
But 50 was it a minute to play? And
Yeah.
you need it. Why?
They needed the 2 scores
Why?
at that point.
And we had a good talk with him, with Richardson yesterday, and we had this talk with Andrew Luck year after year after year, is for a quarterback like that, who big and strong, almost seeks out contact, which is you shouldn't do as a quarterback.
Right.
But it's no when to say when. When is it enough? And you're going to get hit normally, but when can you? A lot of times when he gets out on the corner or he needs X number of yards, and a couple times you're going to have to cut in for contact as opposed to going out. And the one where he got lit up was, what was it, 1st and goal at the 3, and you're trying to score.
Yeah.
I remember we had the thing with Luck all the time, and then he had the really serious injury. Was it the ruptured or spleen?
Was that the kidney?
Kidney.
Yeah, it was the
lacerated kidney.
And that's a football play. You're down inside the 5 and you're trying to score. So it's just that when he's out and about and you can either get out of bounds or, if you need 7, get 8 and then go down instead of trying to get 12. Yep. And he'll learn. He's got so much going on. The hardest thing for him is going to be to say, that's enough, because that's not the way he's built.
I think in this discussion, when you have more weapons around you, you can trust those weapons to get more yards for you.
How would he trust what's around him?
And that's
Right.
the problem right now. As much as Anthony Richardson says that he trusts the guys around him, I believe that he does to some extent. But there comes a point where you realize that you are the biggest weapon that this team has, and you are the best chance, you think, of getting in the end zone. And other guys out there do not have the same opportunity you think you have, as you are 3 yards out, chance to dive in if you so want, if you're trying to. So you are doing it for the team in that sense. Like that's the thought process that happens in a split second when you're down there near the goal line. You realize our running backs are averaging 1.6 yards per carry today. We've been stopped on 4th and inches. We cannot gain a single yard
Somehow
there.
that has to go through his mind
Instantly.
Instantly.
Like all this thing, like I said, all this happens instantly. So I get completely. And it was the same thing or a similar thing for Andrew Luck at that time. Like you need, and this goes to Chris Ballard, you need to put great weapons around your star quarterback in order to keep him from thinking that way. You think Patrick Mahomes is a great mobile quarterback. He runs really well. We've seen him do it in the past, but he so rarely gets injured while running. He did the other year, last year. That was in the AFC Championship game. Like, he doesn't, like, he has had more of a disciplined approach to it because he's had more weapons around him in the past, whether it was Tyreek Hill, whether it was Travis Kelce, like whoever, like the star quarterbacks that can run that often get down quicker are the ones who have more weapons around them, who they trust more to get those yards.
I remember in Peyton's early years, it took Tony Dungy to sort of say a punt's not a bad thing, because in Peyton's mind and a lot of quarterbacks' minds, a punt is a bad thing because if you don't trust your defense, you're going to be 7 points, 3 points further down. This might come to Richardson and it might not. Watch Josh Allen last week. Forget the turnovers. I mean, but he still seeks out contact this deep into his career because that is who he is. Again, I think on a lot of the runs that they design or the options for Richardson, I think he can do a decent job of not getting blown up.
I thought so too.
You get more risky plays in the pocket.
Yeah.
But he has to. This isn't a criticism. He just has to grow into when. How do I remember that Trevor Lawrence talked to him after the game? Protect yourself.
Yep, that's what he said.
And that's not. That's where the balance is you got to protect. Longevity is what you want. In short term, it's 17 games. So how do you balance getting as much as you can out of a play, out of a series, without putting your body at more risk than it inherently is in?
And I'll say that once again, if you're talking about protecting the quarterback, another day where I was not concerned by Bernard Ryman. I think he gave up one pressure in the entire game. So that is a far cry better than we saw last year.
Those guys have edge pass rushers.
They do.
Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, they can move them around back and forth. This side, that side.
There were 4 sacks and two or three hits, but 2 or 3 of the sacks were outside the pocket, and they were like for no.
Yeah, it was like a run for no gain type of deal.
As opposed to Matt Ryan just getting
blown up.
So I was encouraged, but the run game, they 65 yards and 40 on the quarterback, and it's kind of cool to say, and the quarterback, let him. It's not a good thing for your quarterback to lead you in rushing.
No.
It's just not.
No.
How's it working in Chicago?
Not well. Not ideal, as the kids say. No, but with the run game again, this is something else that was a takeaway I thought from week 1 and looking forward, something that will pay dividends down the road when it comes to the run game and its relationship with the pass game. We heard we asked Shane post game about just the lack of downfield plays, and that was a topic of conversation last year too, that you didn't go downfield enough. But they said that Jacksonville was taking them away, and that's because you could have 7 players in the box and stop this run game right now, and you could have 2 safeties deep and take away those deep passing games. And with Richardson, from what we've seen from him in the preseason and what you saw from him in Florida, his deep ball is really, really good. It is probably the best aspect of his quarterbacking game right now. He can throw it forever. He can throw it pretty accurately forever, too. So you want to make him work down the field in the short passing game. You want to make that running game go, which it hasn't yet this year, and keep him from doing something that you saw he was able to do in the preseason. And as long as the Colts can't run the ball, they're not going to get those opportunities, as many opportunities to go down the field. You're not going to see Pittman 40 yards down the field. And they finally saw Pittman in the second half. For crying out loud, 1 target in the first half is not enough. You did not see Alec Pierce in that week 1 game because that's his biggest strength right now early in his career is the downfield passing game.
Pierce had 1 catch for 5 yards.
Yeah, that was it.
And he got blown up on that near the end of the first half.
He did. Yeah, it was a big hit. So yeah, like you say, you're disappointed in what Alec Pierce did week 1. Now, I can agree with that if you're out there as a Colts fan, like you want to see more from Alec Pierce. I would also say that the Jaguars were taking away his biggest strength at the time because you can't run the football right now, so you can't take advantage of some of his opportunities if they have safety help over the top and he's double covered on all these deep balls or deeper balls you're trying to get to him. Like, it starts at that point with running the football and that being a legitimate threat that you can pick up 5 yards on first down. If you don't have that threat, they're going to continue to drop 2 safeties deep. You're not going to get behind the defense as much, and everything else is affected by it. That's again, it comes back, like I said, Chap, to running the football, and until they can fix that, there are going to be other parts of their Colts game that just struggle this year.
And we'll see how it goes, but practice today, Joel Erickson, our friend from the Star, Quentin Nelson is working on the side with trainers. It's going to take, a court order to keep Quentin off the field. Braden Smith's back, and Drew Ogletree out there practicing in a red jersey, so he's got time.
There we go.
Wow.
He's got time.
It's possible.
Yeah. So again, but you got to get the linemen back. It's just again, we're going to beat this to death, but they need to have this line together to grow together. And like you said, I was incredibly encouraged by Bernhard Raimann. So the problem we have in the media now is such a knee-jerk reaction week to week. But how do you not have concern on the run game? You have to.
Yeah. Speaking of the run game, the Colts have added Jake Funk, running back, to the 53-man roster and placed rookie Evan Hall.
Well, he was active Sunday.
Yes, he was called up, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was signed from the press.
He's on the active squad.
Now he's on the roster.
So see, they did address the active roster running back room.
There you go. Boom. Right there. Jake Funk. Problem solved. And Evan Hall, the rookie, is placed on injured reserve after
I was told he will be back this year. That's 4 games.
Okay, good.
So he will be back.
It was an unfortunate thing. He had a nice run, one of their few, and then out.
Sorry, dude. No good. A couple other practice squad moves this week. We won't bog you all down throughout the year with practice squad moves because that would take
As we sit here right now, if I gave you $1 for every practice squad player you could name, how many dollars would you get?
I'd get a couple just because I'm in the locker room and I see the names on the on the wall and I'm like, who is this guy? Yeah, he's not on the 53. He's not on the 53. But I would bet the fine folks listening to this podcast would not, just because they're not in the locker room. And
that's what Ballard does. He moves guys around, this tight end for that tight end.
Yep.
But it's really kind of funny that sometimes they'll make a transaction. Well, we've signed this guy and released this guy, and you say,
Who?
I didn't remember that guy was on the roster.
No, I've never heard of either of these guys. But also Mike Strawn gone from the practice squad this week. He was waived, so that's one name that Colts fans would know. To Carolina, reunited with Frank Reich down there in Carolina.
You look at Strawn, you think, now
this is it.
This is it. This is it, or this is the time he's going to shine, and it just hasn't worked.
Nope.
Here.
Nope. No, it is not. Best of luck to him elsewhere. Maybe it works elsewhere. So he's with, like I said, Frank Reich, and maybe Bryce Young can unlock the magic that is Mike Strawn down there. We're on to Houston. Colts take on the Texans, and number 2 overall pick in this year's draft, C.J. Stroud, at NRG Stadium this weekend. 1 o'clock Sunday kickoff. If you're in central Indiana, it'll be broadcast on Fox 59. Texans opened their season with a loss to the Ravens, 25-9. Not a whole lot of offense to speak of. C.J. Stroud, not a terrible day, not a bad day, I don't think, by any sense of the word for a rookie quarterback. Completed 28 passes of his 44 attempts because they were trailing for a lot of the time. Couldn't really get into the run game with Dameon Pierce. 242 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but was sacked 5 times. So you have that Raven defense that is throwing the whole book at you as a quarterback, and I'm sure that has something to do with the 5 sacks and for Stroud. So yeah, that's their our first impression of the Texans this year. Chap, I with just 9 points, you can chalk that up in part to the tough Baltimore defense, but also it has to be the Texans offense has got to be a work in progress this year too.
Same as here.
Right.
No question. It was 5.5 yards an attempt. Frank always had, I think it was 7.4, 7.5.
Yeah, right around that range is what he wanted.
And that's even Shane Steichen mentioned that when you're judging, evaluating your passing game, it's yards per attempt. And the last couple of years, I mean, last year it was abysmal because they wouldn't, whatever, they just pushed the ball down the field. I just think this again, where when you've got 2 of these offenses with young quarterbacks, is which young quarterback makes the fewest mistakes and makes those 3 or 4 plays. I don't care who the quarterback is. We've talked about this. You're going to have to make 3, 4, 5 plays at some point.
Yep.
And if your guy does and their guy doesn't, then you got a great chance. This is really going to be interesting because it's going to be, I'll probably write about it tomorrow, but it's 2 top 5 quarterbacks against each other. Well, not really, because,
they will never face off against each other on the field at once.
I never played against Tom Brady.
Right.
But that's, these guys are tied to the hip, same way Edgerrin was to Ricky Williams, Peyton was to Leaf. And what's really cool, and we've written about it and talked about it, is the landscape of the AFC South moving forward could very well be young quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence, who's kind of the old man. What was it? Was it 2 years ago?
Right. This
is
his third
overall
year in the league
pick,
here,
and Richardson here, and you got Will Levis in Tennessee, which the way Tannehill played, we may see the Will Levis there very quickly. So that's what's encouraging, and the theme all year that we're going to harp on is did the Colts win, lose, how'd they play, but how is the quarterback progressing? That's what we're all going to be, because that's in the end, that's all that matters is do you see the quarterback doing things? And I saw enough Sunday to say that he can't do it. I know that he can do it because he's shown that he can. So encouraged, but this will be interesting because you got both young quarterbacks, and all the spotlight will be on these guys this week and moving forward.
Yeah, I think Colts fans can look at week 1 and definitely be optimistic about the future. And more.
You didn't walk away thinking, what in the heck do we have?
Yeah. No, you did not think that at all. And with the Texans, with Stroud, Matt, you go out there and you throw for nearly 250 yards against the Ravens defense. Like it's not the 2 touchdowns that Richardson had, but at the same time, you don't walk away from week 1 saying, "Dear Lord, what have we done?" So I think there's some optimism there. Now he's coming back home for his first home start. Like Mike said, this season is going to be for both of these teams seeing how these quarterbacks progress throughout the year. But after week 1, you're not even thinking about throwing in the towel yet. It seemed like a decent start for C.J. Stroud too.
I think there were a lot of similarities, actually, if you just kind of read the recaps of the Colts game and the Texans game. Is both defenses seem like they're okay. They're pretty good, and even in some situations. but the offenses are kind of holding them back because they're just not quite there yet. But they
didn't
can
run the
get
ball.
there.
They didn't run the ball either, did they?
No, they didn't run the ball. It was 23 carries for 72 yards, 3.1 yards, better than the Colts.
I was going to say, the offensive line, just a decent offensive line, should get you 3 yards per carry. The Texans at least got 3 yards per carry.
And I was really surprised. I mean, looking at, I'm going to throw Bryce Young in the conversation too, but all three of those rookie quarterbacks that started this past week, all of them had near 40 passing attempts, which I did not think that the Colts would sniff 40 pass attempts with Richardson, but sometimes that's, how things work out. They did a lot of short stuff with him too, a lot of in-rhythm throws early and things like that. But it's a lot to put on your rookies to have them throw like 40 passes a game.
For sure. And so that's not what you totally want. And both teams would like to run the ball better. With Houston, they fell behind, I think, a little bit earlier, that's why they were throwing more.
It's not like the Colts abandoned the run.
No, not at all.
They
just couldn't do it.
They at some point, it's ridiculous to keep trying to run the ball. When you can't run it, you're just wasting plays. So I think it'll get better. Zach Moss will make a difference because the other guys just weren't reliable options. But yeah, I'll harp on this. It's a cool thing to see your quarterback lead you in rushing. That's not a good sign. It just isn't.
No, it's not.
Unless he just breaks like an 80-yard run or something
which
like
he
that,
will.
which is fine.
He will do that.
And that would be fine, but you don't want the 10 carries for 40 yards to be your best offensive player right there.
Other side of the ball, head coach DeMeco Ryans brought in as a stud defensive mind from San Francisco, had one of the best defenses in the league for several years out there, and he was going to have probably his choice of where he wanted to go somewhat in terms of head coaching gigs, and goes to Houston. Certainly a place with a strong defensive pedigree. They had J.J. Watt for years, had for years back when I was playing fantasy football, a defense that you would want out there. Hasn't been for the last couple of years for sure, but you draft Will Anderson there in the first round, right behind C.J. Stroud at third overall. You're hoping that he builds into a stud pass rusher for years to come, and against the Ravens the Ravens offense, which can kill you with Lamar Jackson out there. It can be a dangerous unit. Certainly seemed to perform fairly well, allowing just 265 total yards. They forced 2 turnovers. I think that for Houston in week 1, on the road in Baltimore, Matt, you could probably be pretty optimistic if you're looking at what DeMeco Ryans has done with this defense. There's a long way to go, but you like what you saw in spite of a loss there in week 1.
That's exactly why you brought in DeMeco Ryans as your coach, because he is those San Francisco defenses that he was the coordinator for, fantastic, and you know that they're going to play sound football, and I do think it sets up a pretty interesting matchup this week for the Colts.
Yeah, I would agree. Chap, let's see here. That side of the ball, when you're talking about red zone as well, defense, the Texans surrendered 3 touchdowns and 5 trips. I mean, they kept them out of the end zone a few times there, but Baltimore was able to convert a couple times there as well. It seems like this could be a defensive matchup. It comes down to that, and like you said, if a defense forces one of these rookie quarterbacks into mistakes late in the game, that could be something that's a deciding factor.
Well, and something else the Colts probably won't have to face this week is a quarterback making 2 or 3 incredible throws.
Right.
Trevor Lawrence threw 3 or 4 that were just, either his guy makes the great catch or no one gets it.
Yep.
The touchdown.
Touchdown was an incredible grab.
We had so much concerns about Dallas Flowers and Darrell Baker. I thought they played pretty well.
They were fine to me.
It goes back to when Peyton went back to Marino, where they said there's no defense for the perfect pass. Mm-hmm. Well, that was their ego talking, but it was true. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was encouraged by the offense or by the defense, and as you've mentioned, the problem's going to be how long can it hold up and keep you in a game. The offense has got to do, 2 of 12 on third down, 1 of 5 on fourth down, on fourth down. That's not sustainable. Everyone knows, but by the Colts did a great job on third down. They really did. I think Jacksonville was 3 of 15 or something like that.
They were not much better at all.
So, but at some point, you've got to lead, and then you give up 2 touchdowns in a minute 6, whatever it is. And this team is not equipped, I don't think, to handle the sudden changes in a game. So it's just don't make mistakes. This isn't complicated. Don't help the other team because you're not in a position to overcome that.
Yeah. That fourth quarter sequence, I believe, went 3 and out. Then they punted to Jacksonville. Jacksonville went for it near midfield on a sneak, which the Colts stuffed. I think it was Zaire Franklin in that play. Then after that, it was the punt that got returned for 46 yards, compounded, then touchdown, interception, touchdown, and that was just the worst sequence that the Colts could have had there.
Yeah, Jacksonville had some weapons that you're not going to see this week in Houston either. Calvin Ridley, to me, proved he's just fine.
Yes.
He's going to have a very good year there in Jacksonville. And like that touchdown drive they had in the first quarter, I thought the first throw that Trevor Lawrence had to Ridley down there on the the far hook to the sideline was an incredible throw because he's rolling against his body, throws it on a rope 30 yards right to him as he turns around. It was perfect timing route. And then the one in the back of the end zone was great too. But Ridley looked every bit the piece that he can be for them this year. Travis Etienne with the big run in the fourth quarter. But if you're looking at explosive players for the Houston Texans, the list is not long.
No.
There would not be a lot of company on that list if there was even one person on that list, to be perfectly honest. You have Dameon Pierce as your number one running back. Nico Collins is your number one wide receiver. I believe they went out and signed Dalton Schultz from the Cowboys at tight end, who's had a really couple productive years in Dallas for sure. You bring him in trying to be a reliable target for your rookie quarterback, but it's not the same threat level, I don't think, Matt, when you're looking at the weapons that are around C.J. Stroud as the Colts had to face last week when they were playing the Jaguars.
It's a rather familiar roster construction, is it not?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I mean, for me, I would take the Colts weapons over the Texans weapons, and
I'm not overly impressed with the Colts.
No,
weapons.
exactly. No, I'm not either. But at least like I still like Pittman. And I think that he's better than anyone else that Houston has. And he showed it. Just dead gum. Get him the ball. Like, get him the ball.
Yep.
Like, don't just have one target to him and a half. Try to get him the ball on the
That
screen.
39-yard bubble screen.
He is deceptively fast.
We haven't seen that speed because they've not put him in a position to use it.
And also, like, and he's like. He has not shown early in his career a great propensity to get separation in routes. He makes a lot of contested catches, and he does that really well. Exactly. You got to scheme it. You got to, like, remember one of his first touchdowns, like, in his rookie year, and he had that crossing route, I think it was against the Green Bay Packers. He catches it, and he has separation because you got it from the scheme, and he's able to run downfield, like, figure out a way to get him the ball in space, and he usually does good things with it. Well,
that's why I say it's the one game you have knee jerk, but I was encouraged by him. They've got to get the ball to Pierce more, which, like you said, it means then taking some shots downfield because that was the criticism last year of him. Although he had a decent year, is they didn't take shots downfield because they couldn't. Josh Downs had 2 or 3 pretty impressive plays. Mm-hmm. He and the quarterback have, not surprisingly, good chemistry because they were roommates in training camp. So it's there, but like you said, until they can get whatever you want to call a reliable run game, 105 yards, I don't know, whatever, it makes everything else so much harder.
Yeah, let's start with 80 yards for crying out loud. Even if breaking the century mark, let's.
How about just 2 yards on 3rd and 1? That's what I'm asking for.
I remember Jackson he failed to pick up 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, and that moves the chains and it keeps the defense off and.
No, it was painful to watch if you're a Colts fan. It was annoying because it's the same problem you've had. It's annoying because you have Jonathan Taylor right there who's made plays like that for you over past years. And like Chris Ballard said over and over, it sucks. It still does. Like watching this game was like, just like I said, just brought that battle back into light. Not that it's going to turn the tables one way or the other, but it just brought it back into the light.
It's a different part of the offense, but it's making the layups. Mm-hmm. Remember that was his criticism with you mentioned his name. I wasn't going to mention his name.
I'm not afraid to say his name.
Hey, he was trending this week on the Twitters because of
the Jets.
Because of the Jets. Sorry, Mike.
So was Matt Ryan. Can you imagine Matt Ryan behind that Jets line?
Like Rodgers dropped back 3 times and was pressured all 3 times. Ryan would get killed, just like he was last year.
You just want to say, people
don't get it.
Did you not watch? Carson Wentz, okay. I mean,
he can at least run around a little bit.
Right. Matt Ryan is like, here he is. It's like they'd put an X back there 5 yards deep. So, but it's crazy how the national media doesn't pay attention,
doesn't get things,
but
doesn't
no.
understand.
So that's why I say I think this is going to be a really telling weekend for these two teams. These are the kind of teams you want to have for your homecoming in college. Mm-hmm. You know, where you think you got a good chance to win. But we were talking in the media room that we'll get to our predictions in a little bit. But to me, this is a game that will determine whether you have a bad year or a really bad year, record-wise. Understanding that this is about the quarterback's growth, but they're keeping score. So you're going to be something at the end of the year, and this schedule still is conducive to picking up some wins early. The Rams, I don't know what they are. I really don't still. They're going to have Cooper Kupp. So this is Baltimore's going to be a tough game, but this is a game, doggone, if you're going to be whatever the term competitive means to you, if you're going to be competitive this year, find a way to win, which they couldn't do twice against a bad Houston team last year.
Right? Flashbacks. Goodness.
Yeah. Like, how can you not win one of your two tries? And, well, if not for a missed kick or a potential interception that went right through someone's hands.
Fourth and whatever zillion it was.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The Texans, looking ahead to this week's game, have quite the lengthy injury list, much longer than the Colts. They have 12 players on their injury list this week, and that includes Jalen Petrie, the safety, second-year player who they have big hopes for.
And safety Jimmy Ward, I'm sorry.
And, safety Jimmy Ward with a hip injury. So both safeties and your left tackle, Laramie Tunsil, with a knee. None of those players practiced on Wednesday. So all three of those pretty important players to what they want to do. Limited in practice on Wednesday. John Mechie III with a hamstring. Robert Woods was just a rest day for Woods, the wide receiver. Both of those two wide receivers. Tight end Dalton Schultz, who I mentioned earlier, with a thigh injury. Tackle George Fant. So both their tackles right there on the injury list. That's never good. And their linebacker, who has seemingly been there forever, Denzel Perryman, had an ankle and a wrist injury. He was their leading tackler against the Ravens too. So quite a few players are dealing with nicks and knacks there in Houston too, and some important players at that. So that's something we'll pay attention to throughout the week. You can follow us on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone for updates through that, through practices reports on Thursday and Friday, and we'll see exactly how banged up these teams are going to be when they get to the field on Sunday afternoon. As we look ahead to this game, the kind of the storyline, Chap, of the top two of the top four picks between Richardson and Stroud will probably be the main selling point of this game on a nationwide spectacle. And we talked to Anthony Richardson, about that in the locker room this week. I thought he was pretty candid about how in the past, back in college, like he kind of viewed that once. He viewed a game between himself, and it was actually Will Levis.
Yeah, correct.
It was right after his big game, first game last
against
year.
Utah, right?
Yeah, Florida beats Utah, big upset win over Utah. That was at Utah. Like, Richardson's getting all this Heisman buzz. He has 3 rushing touchdowns. He has this great jumping touchdown throw in the red zone, which was a crazy play in and of itself. Then he goes into week 2, and you see Will Levis, who's getting some buzz as a first-round quarterback pick, and he did not approach that game mentally in the right.
He took it on that he had to match up with Will Levis.
Right.
Which is never a good thing.
No, you don't want to do that if you're a quarterback. We'll talk about it, and it's a storyline for us.
Right.
But for him, it shouldn't be a deal at all. You should be worried about Will Anderson. You should be worried about Jalen Petrie, Denzel Perryman, those guys on that side of the ball, and what they're supposed to do, what their tendencies are. Like, as a competitor, do you want to be better than the other quarterback? Sure you do, but that's not going to be your focus as you go into the week. And for him, at that point, it was. I guess there's a chance that we see just kind of some of the maturity, the the mental growth from one year to the next.
Which we've seen from him.
Yes, we have, completely. I would agree. And so that's got to be his approach this weekend, and not to avoid like last year when he had, I think, 2 interceptions that week too, no touchdowns, ran like 6 times for 12 yards, just did nothing really to speak of.
And he went out after that game. We talked to him before the season here, and that was sort of his flashpoint.
Yes,
because he went out and got a mental coach. For someone down there, and it's funny, the day we were talking to him at the Colts complex, he said, as a matter of fact, I'm talking to my guy tomorrow. And sometimes we kind of scoff at these things, but it's so much mental. This guy's got all the physical tools. He's got physical tools that 99.9% of the people don't have. So, but it's how you do things between the years. We've seen so many players who have so much going for Ryan Leaf, for crying out loud.
Yep.
And
Tons of physical tools.
Yeah, and it's the it factor that just a small handful of guys have, and so he's going out of his way to kind of enhance that. But it started there. It started with the Levis game where he said, he let everything get to him, the pregame hype and all this stuff, and he sort of made it clear that I'm not going to let that happen again.
Yep. And maybe one thing going for him here, Matt, is he's actually good friends with C.J. Stroud. So you have a good history with him. You've been to camps together. That might alleviate some of the pressure, I think, on him, too, that you're just going out there and you have a friend on the opposite side of the field instead of a competitor on the opposite side of the field. That's a possibility. But nevertheless, it is something that if you're Richardson, you can't think about too much, as it is. We'll build it up as the number 2 versus the number 4
We're
pick.
allowed to.
Exactly. We can.
So we can talk about these things.
Yes. And if you're a Colts fan, you're going to do this for years. You're going to compare these two careers if indeed these guys go on to what both these teams expect. They want to extend them to the 5th-year option. You want to have a problem where you have to sign them to what Jim Irsay says $1 billion contracts.
Can you imagine after Joe Burrow's contract let's say 2 of these 4 quarterbacks in this year's draft hit it. Mm-hmm. So in 4 years?
Yeah.
What's
that
contract going to be?
It's going to be big. I mean, what
60,
was Burrow's?
70 $1 million a year?
Yeah, crazy. So over the length of a 15-year career, there's the chance. I mean, you keep on going up and up and up. There's no end in sight.
Line always goes up here.
Yeah.
Well, these guys. Joe Burrow got that. Was it 5 for $275?
Yeah. You laugh at right now looking back at movies like Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
Where the receiver there, Cuba Gooding Jr., he was asking for a couple $1 million a year as just a stud wide receiver in the NFL, and they weren't giving it to him, and they wanted to give him well, I don't even remember what the offer was, but eventually it's this biggest deal ever that he gets a 4-year $7 million contract or something like that, and right now it's You do that for a nobody in the league right now. You do that for Ashton Doolin. I shouldn't say nobody, but Luke Rhodes and Ashton Doolin, guys who are very much ancillary characters to an NFL team that, as I've pointed out earlier, are still important to an NFL team. A guy like Doolin or a guy like Luke Rhodes, but not your all-star,
not where your money's
Pro
going to
Bowl
go.
players.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that was just in the mid-'90s. That was just. What was it? Less than 30 years ago it was that, and now here maybe 30 years ago is a long time, especially to people who are of the younger generation. Maybe I'm getting old, and maybe that's all this is evidence of. But it's just crazy to me how much it has ballooned and will continue to.
And
do
it's
so.
not gonna hit a ceiling.
No, I don't think so.
And again, just think, we talk about Richardson. In 5 years, Joe Burrow gets another contract.
Yep.
I mean, and if his arrow keeps going up, and it will. I mean. Last week was a total aberration, had to be. But the NFL is all about prioritizing, 3 positions. Boza got a pretty good contract, too.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Quarterback, pass rush, and left tackle, and receiver. I mean, that's what's crazy is. So, yeah, you have to know that at least 2 of these quarterbacks are going to make it. Mm-hmm. So, of course, the Colts hope.
Right. They've got one of them.
They're one of the 2, yep.
Yeah. I'll say this, and I think, you alluded to that point, quarterback, left tackle, pass rush. This might have been the first game in a long time where Colts fans can feel decent about all 3 of those positions. Because
I thought Quiddy played
exactly.
well. I thought Quiddy played well.
I thought he had a pretty good game.
I think we've probably all, myself included, have been a little bit critical because he's not given us 12, 13, 14 sacks. Injuries have been a factor, but I just don't know that that's who he is. Someone in the press room made a real good point comparison that he's reminds him of Jabal Sherry.
That's what I said last week on this podcast.
Yeah, and doggone, that's not bad.
No, not at all.
It's just that you took him to be Robert Mathis or Freeney, which was unfair.
Right.
But I think it'll be an interesting decision. Do they do the 5th-year option on Quiddy? Mm-hmm. If what we saw Sunday is what we're going to get, sure you do.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be like with Michael Pittman. If you don't extend him, you're going to pay at least that much
next year
to find somebody else.
And that too, yes, exactly.
So, yeah, when you get your own, in some cases with the Colts, it's been you've been right with your draft picks and you've overpaid, if you want to make the argument with Shaq and Braden and all these guys. But at least it's a decision you have to make.
Yeah.
So but I was extremely pleased with Quiddy. I thought the defensive line, Buck and Grover, that's a given. Every week, that front seven, linebackers with Zaire and Shaq and EJ Speed, that's pretty good.
As long as they're not on the field too much, like we've said. They can't be on the field for consistently throughout the second half. Like after 3 and out, after 3 and out, after 3 and out, after
because it just wears you down after a while.
Like you can be a really good front seven and still struggle in the fourth quarter, which is what we saw from them last year, and I think the entire weight of the season weighed on them at the end of the year last year too. And then we saw it here in game one that it can't continue like that. But as we look forward to this weekend, Colts are 1.5-point favorites over the Houston Texans. The line for the game, or the over-under, I should say, is 39.5. Not exactly a rousing game suspected by Vegas. A 20-19 ball game right there is perhaps what they think. And like I tweeted it out last week after week one. I was surprised that the Colts actually opened, I saw somewhere, as underdogs, like 1.5-point underdogs to the Texans. But now they're 1.5 point. Yes, it's 1 or 1.5 point favorites now down in Houston.
Based on what?
I don't know. It beats me.
Both teams lost. The Colts didn't look as bad losing as Houston did.
Exactly. They didn't look quite as bad. They looked maybe a little bit more explosive on offense. Maybe they could score a few points against two probably pretty good defenses. That's what Vegas thinks, to set the over-under at 39.5. So that's the expectation. Like these teams, to me, like they've played some games in the past that have had some big numbers, like we saw last year at the end of the year. That was a pretty big, high-scoring game. I forget the exact final, but it was a high-scoring game. Week one was 20-20 last year, so that was like that we don't need to talk about too much. But there have been some big performances in the past, like some big offensive outputs.
A couple of them a couple of years ago, they hinged on takeaways at the goal line.
They did, yes.
Shaq batting the ball away, and then I don't know whether it was Kenny Moore. Kenny Moore recovered one, but it was a Deshaun Watson fumble, and then the receiver, was it Kiki
Kuti at that point.
So, and that's what this game will be. It's who makes or doesn't make that 2-3 plays in the fourth quarter.
Like this past week one, Anthony Richardson had the ball in the fourth quarter, down, chance to drive and score and tie it up, take the lead, threw an interception. You're going to get that from the rookie.
Right.
Like what happens this weekend? Which rookie is able to succeed? Which rookie is able to fail? Because you figure it's not going to be a 38-0 ball game in the fourth quarter on either side of this.
No.
There's going to be an opportunity there in the fourth quarter for someone to make a play. Can Richardson do it on the road in his first road start? Can C.J. Stroud do it here at home with the weight of the support of the Houston folks and the crowd behind him? Like what's it going to be? That's what it's going to come down to. Crunch time plays. Can Quiddy Pay or DeForest Buckner get the strip sack at the most important time in the game? Like all that stuff. So
I'd be remiss. I did talk about this a little bit in the Monday podcast, but that was one of the crazier touchdowns I have ever seen.
Oh my goodness, yeah, that was insane. I loved Zaire's locker room. What he said in the locker room to us was basically, he said, "I was just trying to be a bleep hole by punching that out."
We've seen him do that in practice.
Yeah, exactly. Just boom, goes for the ball, and it turns out that, well, like I saw it and I thought it was a fumble live.
The ref threw the beanbag.
Exactly.
When they throw the beanbag, it's a fumble.
That's a fumble, and you've got to be on your P's and Q's. And their rookie running back Tank Bigsby was not. And if he had taken off right away, he could have scored a touchdown on the other side. But yeah, that was an insane play, absolutely crazy. And you credit Zaire for, well, he might have had an ulterior motive, as he put it.
Right.
But nevertheless, he did it.
Still turns into a heads-up play.
And Buckner picked it up, and Buckner said he was not going to let an offensive lineman tackle him.
He also wasn't going to lateral.
No, he wasn't going to do that.
Because Shaq was kind of there with him. If I'm a defensive lineman, I'm not getting rid of the ball.
Nope, I got this opportunity, and I'm down inside the 10. At this point, it's me or nobody. So
it could have been even crazier. He almost fumbled going into the end zone.
So
Can you imagine that being a touchback?
Close.
Which is still the worst rule in the NFL.
Exactly.
The terrible rule.
You're rewarding the offense for doing nothing.
Yeah. So anyway, all that to say, it's time for us to make our predictions for this week. Colts-Texans this weekend in Houston. I'll go first. Matt goes second. Chappell go third. And kind of as Chappell alluded to earlier, this is a game that like if you're a Colts fan, you're optimistic for this year, like, and if you bet on the over 6.5 wins, like this is a game you need. You need to take care of Houston, which is a team that is in a very similar situation to you. If you want to challenge to hit over that number for this year. If you lose and if it doesn't look so good in Houston, then this is going to be a long season, you figure. So you're probably going to learn something about the Colts, at least where they are early in the year for the first half of the season in this game this weekend. I like the Colts' offensive weapons better than Houston right now. Their defenses are probably pretty similar in terms of what we learned from them in week 1. If Zach Moss comes back, that is a help. I'm not going to say it solves the running game, but maybe you can at least get to 3 yards per carry, 3.2 or 3.3. That'd be fantastic.
Baby steps.
Exactly. Like I said, baby steps. And so a baby step would be a win in Houston. I am picking the Colts this week to even things up in their schedule, in their record. They go 1-1 on the year after they beat the Texans by the final score of 17-14 or 17-13. A thrilling game down there in Houston, a low-scoring affair where defenses kind of have the upper hand on each other. And like we said, it comes down to the fourth quarter. The Colts are able to make the play that's necessary to get the win. So 17-13 Colts for me. Matt, what do you think?
Very, very similar thoughts on that. I'm going to go slightly higher scoring, but not too much, 23-20. It'll depend, is the moment too big for Anthony Richardson? This is his first road game, that sort of thing. But so far, he's shown that, nothing has fazed him yet. So I think they go in. I do think they're a little bit better at the skill positions than Houston is. And I do think they come away with one of the wins that they're going to get this year.
All right, Chap.
I'll one-up you. I've got 24-20.
Yeah, okay.
And I think there's more of a chance of the moment being too big for Stroud at home with all that. And I think Richardson's game is conducive to travel, I guess. I mean, with the way he can run the ball. And so, yeah, I think, again, and what we talked about, if you're going to have something resembling a nice season, you got to beat Houston. If you can't beat Houston, it's going to be really, really a bad year that all we're going to be caring about is the quarterback growth and not 2 wins, 3 wins, 7 wins. So
if you're going to watch the game, check out Fox 59 Sunday afternoon, 1 p.m. if you're in central Indiana. And also join us for the Blue Zone pregame show, 11:30 a.m. That's over on CBS 4. Check out Mike's work writing for everything that he's heard in the Colts locker room over the week online, fox59.com.
Good stuff from Reggie today.
Yeah,
Always good stuff from Reggie.
Reggie Wayne, that is,
good.
of course.
Reggie column?
Yeah, so you love
it.
Reggie columns,
Yeah.
yes. You never know what we're going to get.
Or at least a Reggie notebook or something.
Yeah,
along those
exactly.
lines.
Reggie's fun. Reggie's fun.
He's great. So check it out there, and we'll see you next week, win or lose, down in Houston, to recap it all and preview week 3. But got to get to week 2 first. So we'll see you next time. For Matt and Mike, I'm Dave. This has been the Colts Blue Zone Podcast.